So greetings from Pennsylvania once again. I've got a haunted tale to share with you today involving ghosts and, strangely enough, people being turned into sausage. So I'm up here in northern Berks County at a place called Hawk Mountain. I know a lot of you are familiar with this place. And I told this story many years ago, maybe not many, but about 5 years ago. I kind of started a little series on haunted Pennsylvania, and I kind of let that go. But I think I want to pick that up again and make like an official playlist on my channel concerning haunted stories here in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to pick that up again, and we're going to start with this one. I'll probably revisit some locations and do some new ones. So yeah, this deals with the whole Shambacher's Tavern here along Hawk Mountain Road. Alright, so we're going to head on down the way. I think this down here is the education center. The main visitor center is up the road a little ways, and the tavern itself, if you come up from that way, from the Berks County side, you'll pass the tavern. It'll be on your right. Cool little white building. Built in 1793 actually, so it's quite old, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, some of the history. I'm gonna make my way this way. Just a quick note about the tavern if you do come up here. The building is private property. It's no longer a tavern, it's a private residence now, so just keep that in mind. It's not open for people just to come up there and poke around and explore the place. It is a home, it's private property, so if you come up here looking for it, just respect it. You can drive past it and stuff, but it's not a place for you to mess around and be disrespectful. Right here is a view of the old tavern from the roadside. I'll zoom in just a little bit. But yeah, built in 1793. It's a beautiful looking place. It would be cool to be on the inside, but like I said, it is a private residence. But I will find a spot and we'll talk about what happened here. Just down the way is this interesting little shelter. I think this is where I told the story last time, but our haunted tavern is just across the road there through the brush too. Might get a few other looks at it from this way in a moment. But there was a barn on this side of the road too somewhere. Who knows, maybe in this spot here. That barn plays into our story too. So what makes this place so haunted? A number of tales mention that the haunted aspect of this dates back to even like Native American times. Supposedly there was some kind of ancient ceremonial circle up here somewhere. Some tales say it was in the backyard of the tavern. I don't know if it's some kind of stone circle or something where a lot of the tribes, the Lenape, the Delaware tribes, the chiefs kind of gathered around that circle to have meetings and discussions, I guess you could say. And then at some point that circle was destroyed by the building of this tavern or something similar to that, and now the spirits of some of those Native Americans haunt this area, and supposedly there's a giant ghost that can be seen as you drive up the road sometimes. That would be this road right down here that goes through Hawk Mountain. Like I said, some folks say it's a giant ghost. Others just claim to see, more human-sized Native American ghosts here in the area as they hike around the mountains or drive up past the tavern, which is right up there. And then sometime in the mid-1700s, maybe the 1740s, early 1750s, the Gerhardt family moved to this area, had their farm up here somewhere. But during the French and Indian War in the year 1756, on one of the Indian raids, the Gerhardt family was massacred, all except the son, Jacob, who survived. So Jacob is the one who built this tavern. He came back about 1793, like I said, and built this tavern in the location of where his family had first settled. There's another look at the tavern up through the trees here. Yeah, so the Gerhardt family is also supposedly haunting this area because Jacob's parents and a number of his siblings were slaughtered in that massacre. But time-wise, as we move up into the 1860s, our story starts to get a bit more interesting. And it was during that time that Matthias Shambacher and his wife bought this place. And it was then that it was turned into kind of like a roadside inn and tavern for different travelers coming up from Berks County, heading up over the mountain. It was used by the locals as well. And that all comes into our story in a little bit. So as the story goes, some of the guests who would stay here, especially like the peddlers, those who were coming through the area to sell stuff, they would end up disappearing after being last seen here at the inn or the tavern. And a number of occasions people reported seeing that the items that the peddlers were selling, they would see the Shambachers selling the same stuff at like a local merchant's place or somewhere. So people started putting two and two together. You know, those missing peddlers were last seen here, and then the Shambachers were seen selling the items that once belonged to the peddlers. So they started gaining a reputation. They were never actually convicted of anything. I think the local authorities did stop by several times to question them. They were always chased off the property. There was never any proof that these guests were being disposed of. And speaking of being disposed of, there's more to that. Yes, once again, the old house and tavern is on that side of the road, but over here somewhere was supposed to be a barn. There's stories of an old well being located on the property, probably more by the house. So that old barn and well do play into the more sinister side of this story. Speaking of which, where does that come from? Well, the locals would stop here too to spend the night or to have a meal. And of course the locals didn't disappear because that would incriminate the Shambachers too much if the locals started disappearing. You know, it was the people who always disappeared were the travelers who no one would maybe notice were gone because they didn't have family in the area and stuff like that. But one local in particular spent the night here, and he was fed what was called some old German sausage. And he thought it was interesting. It tasted different than any other sausage he'd had before, because sausage was eaten in this area quite a bit. The Germans in this area, most of the immigrants, like I said, the Gerhardts and the Schambachers, that's all German. He thought it was interesting too, because when he put his horse out in the barn on this side of the road, he didn't notice any animals. There's no livestock over here, so he was kind of curious, where did the sausage come from? What were they making the sausage from? And that's kind of where a different spin takes on this, comes to this story, if you know where we're going with that. So this is where the story starts to take on that more sensational aspect. It goes from, missing persons that were just being disposed of by the Shambachers to having them turned into sausage. But supposedly, over there in the tavern, when the peddler or the traveler would come through, they would start feeding him, get them drunk, and they would, fall asleep or pass out, and then they would dispose of them, bring them over here to the barn where they would, butcher them into smaller pieces, take what they needed to make sausage, and the rest of what was left they would dump down that old well, whether that old well was over here or on the other side by the house. Some stories say that the bodies, or what was left of them, were just buried in the backyard. Some say they were dumped down the well. But that's the story. Whether that's true or not, like I say, it kind of jumps from just people missing, being disposed of, and their belongings being stolen and sold elsewhere, to all of a sudden them being turned into sausage to feed, and that sausage then was used to feed other guests that came through the area. That is the story of the Shambachers. So is there any truth to this gruesome legend or not? No one really knows for sure, but one spin on this story says that on his deathbed, like in a fever dream, he confessed to killing up to 14 people. Whether that just means killing them or if that means turning them into sausage too, like I said, we don't really know. He is buried up at the local church, the New Bethel Church Cemetery. I did film there years ago. I think I will again maybe in a future video, because there's other stories about that cemetery too. But that is where he's buried, but his tombstone is missing. I think someone told me the church just took it down because they kept getting vandalized too much. Yeah, but that's the story. And also he also claimed in that fever dream that he was coaxed into doing those killings, that there was some malevolent spirit here on the mountain that was like haunting him and speaking to him at night and in his dreams and telling him to do those things. So that just kind of adds to the whole creepiness of the story too. And there are other hauntings associated with this place as well. Some people claim that there's a spirit of a little girl that lives in that house, that she plays a whistle or something as she died in that house. I think they've had like paranormal people like do investigations in that house at different times, and they claim that there's several spirits living in that house. So there's all kinds of legends about this valley. Well, we're not too far from what's called Eckville. So there's all kinds of stories here in the Hawk Mountain area. I did a video maybe last year over what's called Owl's Head, the story is called The Hermit of Hawk Mountain. They found his body over on Owl's Head. There's a whole story behind that too, but yeah, all kinds of stories of things going on in this area. Here you go, just one last look at the place again. Shambacher's Tavern. Quite the storied place. So there you go, that is the story, the legend, the haunting of Schambacher's Tavern. Do we know if any of that's actually true? No. Do we want to know if any of it's true? I'm not sure about that either, but it makes for a good story. But I do want to stress once again that house, it is private property. Like I say, it's not some place you can just walk up to, snoop around, look in the windows. It's a private residence, and you come up this area, you just need to respect that. But you can let me know what you thought of this story in the comments. If you have your own ghost story that you would like me to share that's in the area, you can share it with me. Maybe I'll make a video of it sometime. But I think that'll be it, folks. It's getting hot out here today, so I think we'll head home. All right, but as always, thanks for coming along. Like I said, I'm gonna start making a playlist for these haunted videos. We'll revisit some I did in the past, like 5 years ago. I have a lot of new viewers since then, so it doesn't hurt to revisit some places, and I'll be looking for some new ones as well. All right, as always, folks, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.